Hello, I'm Justine, and I'm here with the Ring of Democracy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was started in 2016 in order to engage, educate, organize, and mobilize Black and Brown communities, specifically marginalized communities overall. And one way we are doing that is by informing folks about the people who are running for various seats, various candidates. And I am very happy to have with me today Pacey Cervantes. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're running for Congressional seat District 3.
Yes. Yeah. So I am, like Justine said, I'm running for Congressional seat in California District 3. I'm Lyndon Pacey Cervantes. I have been on the radio in the local community for about 15 years. You may have heard my voice on 105.1 KNCI, now 100.5 V101, The End, KFBK, and a couple more. But the reason I'm running for Congress is because many reasons. One is because for 3 years I was my mother's caretaker, and the federal healthcare system failed her. If she was able to afford the life-saving medication and just coverage that she needed to survive, she would be alive today. She passed away about 3 years ago. And for 3 years, I have been wrestling on what I can do to help people and make sure families don't go through this again. And being on the radio was such a passion of mine. I loved getting people to work, getting people home from work, making them maybe laugh on their way, think on their way. But I feel like I could do more when it comes to especially families dealing with healthcare affordability crises. So that is essentially, Justine, why I decided to run, is because really in my mother's name, because I want to make sure that the pain that my family went through when my mom passed, she didn't need to pass because she should have been able to get the life-saving care that she needed. The federal healthcare system, again, failed her. So I want to make sure that other families do not go through that same thing that I did.
I see. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And on that point, you've talked about how some of the funding towards causes like that would come from billing the billionaires.
Yes.
And I wanted to hear a little bit more of a breakdown of the logistics of that.
Yes, something else I'm very passionate about is billing the billionaires. I just want to make it abundantly clear, I don't hate billionaires. People people say, oh yeah, Pacey said about this, he hates billionaires. No, we're actually going to end up loving billionaires, because what they're going to do is when they finally pay the same percentage of taxes that you and I do, we are actually going to make sure that healthcare is affordable. So my three main things, of course, healthcare being the biggest one because of my mom in her name. The others are affordable childcare, and also taking down monopoly utility companies like PG&E. I do have a personal vendetta against PG&E just because I had them for so long. And luckily now I have SMUD for electricity. I still have PG&E for gas, and they're still ripping off their customers. So when we do bill the billionaires, when we implement wealth taxes and make sure that, another example is when they get paid in stocks, they don't get taxed like income does, like especially CEOs. A lot of that needs to be implemented in order to expand affordable health care, going towards Medicare for all, but also not only just making sure we have Medicare for all, but also improving Medicare. Because like I said, my mom was on Medicare and she could not still afford many of the life-saving things that she needed on Medicare. So expanding affordable health care, making sure that everyone has access to affordable health care, childcare, and taking down monopoly utility companies like PG&E.
I see. And when it comes to other everyday essentials like gas and groceries, what specific policies would you support to bring relief to working families?
I think, well, first of all, I would vote against a war in Iran, because that is essentially a huge thing. We haven't even seen the long-term price effects of this war in Iran. We've only seen it with gas, which is insane already. Going from, $4 something a gallon to almost $6 a gallon is insane. This war was not necessary. I would definitely do as much as I can to prevent this war from continuing, because in fact we are coming up on a 60-day moratorium on the war with the War Powers Act, and the president should not be able to continue this war. We're going to unfortunately start seeing the prices of groceries and everything else increase, because with the gas price increase, everything else increases, because it needs to be transported. So whether that's, by boat or by road, gas prices affect everything, which is also another thing that I don't understand why we haven't gone more towards renewable energy. We're the richest country in the world, and we're still so reliant on something as rudimentary as oil. And the fact that we are is insane. China is beating us on renewable energy, and we need to catch up to China and overshadow them when it comes to renewable energy, and I believe we can do that for sure. So once we are more reliant on renewable energy, these things in the Middle East won't affect us anymore. And another Republican president will not get us into a war over oil because we won't need it anymore.
I see. And in general, when it comes to trust in government, that has certainly declined for many Americans. You're speaking on that.
Yeah.
How would you work to increase transparency, accountability, and public trust in your role as a member of Congress?
I think my issue with, and let me be very clear, I criticize Republicans, I criticize Democrats just as much because we are horrible at messaging. We are not transparent. I feel like a lot of our people in power prefer to show themselves as perfectly buttoned up. And I think one thing that we need to take away from Trump getting elected twice as Americans is that whether they agreed with him or not, a lot of people voted for him because they knew what was going on in his head. It wasn't perfectly, he just says whatever's in his mind. Now, a lot of it is crazy. 99% of what he says is crazy. But I do believe that we as, me as a future congressman needs to just start saying what's really on our mind instead of what we think the American people want to hear. We need to tell them what they need to hear and what our actual opinions are without consulting 17 other people and then make it sound like we're reading from a piece of paper a pre-written answer. And social media really starts with that. A good person that's doing that right now is Zohran Mamdani. I mean, he posts probably one video at least every single day. And every single day you're seeing what he's doing, what he's been doing ever since going into office. Now, as a congressman, that won't be as easy because the mayor of New York is literally himself doing so much, whereas a congressman is more about votes. But there are many things that congresspeople could be showing the American people and being more transparent about. And I fully believe that that is a huge, huge key to making sure people are trusting of the government more.
Certainly. And another way that a lot of American citizens are concerned is they're concerned about job security and upward mobility. And if you could speak on a little bit more how you plan to address those issues and help make career opportunities, help distribute career opportunities more evenly, especially among those who are more marginalized.
Well, I think the problem is a lot of marginalized communities are going to be greatly affected by AI. Is a huge thing that we're not really talking about, but we should. And I feel like unions are going to be a huge help for that. When it comes to not super recent, but the writers' strike, with SAG-AFTRA, one of the big things was going against AI and making sure that AI is not replacing their jobs. And unions, I am an ungodly pro-union. Like unions are the backbone of the working class people. And so I genuinely believe that supporting unions will help support job security and will also in the future help prevent, we're already losing jobs to AI, but will help prevent more. So being very pro-union is a huge part of my platform for sure.
I see. And circling back to your point about increasing transparency at the government level, you've advocated for making super PACs illegal and also establishing 18-year term limits. I was curious where you had originally decided that you wanted to run on that platform, why you decided to run.
So, I mean, super PACs are just the amount of money that is spent from super PACs and from billionaires and millionaires is the reason why, in many cases, I believe Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same coin because they are bought. They're bought by oil, they're bought by AIPAC, they're bought by corporations. And getting dark money out of politics, even though the average American is not super concerned about that, it is a very concerning thing that we, or me as a future congressman, should deal with, because once you get money out of politics, you actually get people voting based off their morals and not what is good for their checkbook. and getting, super PACs and, sorry, I forgot what the other thing you mentioned.
18-year term limits.
18, I mean, term limits, I don't understand. Sorry, that's another topic where politicians are so on the wrong side versus where Americans believe. You ask any American, and I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of them will say absolutely term limits, and that 1 out of 10 probably doesn't really know, doesn't have an answer. I don't really think I've ever run into a typical American voter that says, no, we shouldn't have term limits. Like, why we haven't? One of the great things about, you can complain about the California government, and I do often, but one of the great things that we have is that we have term limits here. The exact date I picked 18 because that is 3 terms as a senator, so the exact amount of time doesn't necessarily, that's not as, specific as just getting term limits settled in. And the problem is getting House and Senate members to vote essentially against their own jobs, because they want to sit in that seat forever. And we need to, no matter, I do not plan on being in Congress for a very long time. And so I would absolutely vote for term limits. 18 is a number that I think is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And related but slightly different topic, you have spoken on how you believe ICE could be rebuilt into a humane department within within Homeland Security. I was curious if you could elaborate a bit on how that would be done.
Yeah, the thing is, ICE per administration is dealt with differently. What a lot of people are saying is, well, Obama was called the deporter in chief. He still did it in a humane way. So, thank God we got Kristi Noem out. The next guy coming in isn't much better, but it is a slight improvement, if I can even say that. But again, what Trump was voted in for was to strictly focus on illegal, undocumented immigrants that break laws, that are essentially criminals. Whether you decide whether an undocumented immigrant is a criminal or not just for being in the country, that's besides the point. If they're here and they're contributing to our economy and they are not breaking any rules, then why do we waste the resources of deporting them? So what we've seen is countless U.S. citizens even being murdered at the hands of ICE. And so neither of those ICE officers are being held accountable. So obviously holding them accountable is a huge thing, but it really needs to be less of a law enforcement situation and more of a social service situation. And obviously, there's trafficking and stuff like that should be held with, law enforcement. But ICE really needs to be more just focusing on getting undocumented immigrant criminals out instead of going into farms where they are literally helping us put food on the table and then deporting those people. It's insane. I genuinely believe that Trump, again, has used it as a political pawn, Department of Homeland Security in general, just to get the numbers up of deportations to satisfy his base. But we just need to focus on people that are committing crimes, and that's it.
And for those folks who have committed crimes, when you say, this is a humane department, the treatment, I would assume, is going to be on the same level as if an American citizen were to commit a crime. There won't be a second-class treatment to that person who may end up being deported.
No, every single person in this country gets equal justice. So whether you are an American citizen and you are arrested, or you are an undocumented immigrant and you are arrested, you still have due time in court. So you still should, because right now they're just deporting without really even getting any kind of a court case. So why are we arresting people that have been contributing to our economy for 20 years, not even seeing a judge and just being deported right away? So a lot of what the administration is doing is not even following the laws, not even following the Constitution. So when every single person that is arrested in America needs their due time in court for sure. Mm-hmm. Not a second-class type situation at all.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very thorough. And moving on to, how do you plan to ensure that historically underserved communities, including Black, Brown, and working class communities, have equitable access to opportunities and resources?
Yeah, so with that, I feel like healthcare, expanding affordable healthcare really is a huge component of that. Making sure that not just historically wealthy communities have access to good, clean medical resources, but also the low-income communities need, if not more, access to it. Because when you start with making sure that every American is healthy, then what they can start doing is they can start contributing even more to the economy, and just making sure that, another thing is universal, is affordable childcare. A lot of people are, and that really does more affect the Black, brown, and historically lower income communities, because a lot of the jobs that women have in those communities don't even make enough to afford childcare. So if a woman is forced to choose between having a child or having a career, then that's not going to help you get better in life financially. And so I am, as a gay man, women have always been my biggest ally, no offense to the straight men. However, what I will say is that, women in general, but in lower income communities, especially communities of color, are sitting here choosing between, can I have a kid or can I have a career? And it shouldn't be that way. So we should absolutely be expanding affordable childcare as well as utilities. Underserved communities really are the ones that are mostly hit by businesses like PG&E that have the monopoly, because they have no choice. When you have no choice but PG&E or a utility company like that, then you have to pay it, and that's the only way you can live. And so essentially smuttifying PG&E or other monopoly utility companies is going to help these underserved communities as well. So expanding affordable healthcare, especially for these lower income communities, expanding affordable childcare, and also making sure that these monopoly utility companies are turned not-for-profit and they are engaged in the community and providing energy for those communities, for sure.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, we're going to get into our last question before we wrap up here.
Sure.
Which is related to what you were talking about with utilities, for sure. Housing affordability is also a major challenge in many communities. What federal solutions would you support to address housing costs and availability?
Yeah, a couple things on that. One is just giving counties and states more money to build affordable housing. The other thing is, there's a lot of red tape, especially here in California, that we really just need to cut in order to build more affordable housing. We can reseal that red tape a little bit later, but right now we are in a housing crisis. We are in an affordability crisis. And that's why we are the state with, I believe, the largest amount of homeless in America. And cutting that red tape, I understand that red tape is for certain reasons, but you can cut through that red tape in order to build more affordable housing. And many cities are going to need federal funding for that. Californians in general pay more in taxes than we get back. And so we also have the most affordability crisis when it comes to housing. So we really deserve to get more of that federal tax money that we give back. They mostly go to red states. Blue states are kind of hung dry for that. So I definitely believe that also I would say something that I could do as a congressman is to add into any future tax bills that we do, giving credits for landlords that don't increase rent more than 5% in any given year. That's something that Biden came up with. I don't believe it was implemented, but I think that was a pretty good idea. But mostly it's just and obviously not deporting all these undocumented immigrants that have been contributing to our economy. A lot of them are the ones that are building houses. So if we continue to deport all these undocumented immigrants that have not even committed any crimes, we're not going to be able to build any more houses, and the crisis is going to get worse and not better.
Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Lyndon, Pacey?
Pacey Cervantes. Lyndon Pacey Cervantes. Yeah, sorry, that is a little confusing. So Pacey Cervantes was my radio name. My legal name is Lyndon Cervantes. So what everyone's going to see on the ballot is Lyndon, in quotes, Pacey Cervantes. So yeah, sorry, I should have cleared that up at the beginning, huh?
No worries. Well, thank you so much for jumping into the Ring of Democracy to explain your platform a little bit more for us today. And if you want to explain a little bit more about why you think folks should vote for you? Just a quick summation.
Yeah, for sure. So again, Lyndon, Pacey Cervantes, that's what you're going to see on the ballot. I have been a trusted voice in the community for 15 years. I've gotten this district specifically through COVID. I've gotten this district through fires, through flooding, through snowstorms, and through heat waves. People have trusted me with the voice. I know I've talked to so many people. I used to talk to 500,000 people every single week for 15 years. I know what this community needs. It's not just on what we've talked about today, but there's more. You can go to cervantesforcongress.com to see my whole slew of list of policies that I hope to change in America. And I genuinely believe that the Democratic Party needs a voice, a better voice, because our messaging is horrible. Our messaging is off. And someone that has made a career of communicating with people, with the community for almost 25 years. I genuinely believe that I can be that voice for the Democratic people. So CervantesForCongress.com, you want to get involved.
Thank you so much. Cool. Yeah, and thank you to the viewers as well for watching. We have some more interviews out already, I'm sure, and possibly more to come. So please stay tuned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Justine.